Alrighty, good evening. I'm going to make a little video tonight for you to walk you through the steps on how to create your own 9-point value scale. And if you are using oil paints, you're going to be using the Gamsol that I provided for you in your glass jar at the end of class. And if you're using acrylic, you're going to just be using oil. So tonight, this demonstration is going to be in acrylic paint. And if by a chance you have a palette knife for yourself at home, you can use that for this exercise and it will make things a little bit easier. I realize that students don't have that and this wasn't provided for you to take home, so most of you will just have a paintbrush at this point. So this demonstration is going to walk you through that process by just using a paintbrush, which is what you all have. Okay, so tonight got my water and I've got a paintbrush and I have the two colors that were provided for everyone, the black and the white. The other thing that you're going to need tonight is the little cardboard that was given to you at the end of class. And on your cardboard, you're going to just break it up into 9 sections, even sections. The first 3 little squares you're going to label high key. The next 3 squares will be mid key and the last 3 will be low key. And you can see a visual of that in the photograph that I provided along this video above the palette on the screen. So this is going to be pretty straightforward. Shouldn't take you too long to do this. And let's see. One thing you'll want to do is just get yourself set up in your house. Lay out your palette, which is what I'm using here tonight is the Butcher palette that I had on the supply list. So it's just an enamel tray. You could, and most of you will have the disposable palettes that I provided for you at the end of class. So you'll just lay out that disposable palette on your table if you want to set something underneath of it so that you don't get paint everywhere, like a paper bag or some kind of a plastic. And then I'm also wearing my apron tonight. So I recommend when you're painting to wear something to prevent paint getting on your clothes, and I'm also wearing my rubber gloves just to get into good habit of not getting paint on my skin. So just to get started, a quick little overview of where we're going with this. When we start to create a 9-point value scale, we start from the end, which is the darkest, which would be your number 9, and then the number 1, which is your lightest. So we'll start with the end spectrums. We'll paint in those 2 blocks, and then we'll start. The very first color mix will be a 50-50 of those colors. So half of white, half of the black, and it'll give us the number 5 on your value scale. So it's going to be basically right in the center. So again, just starting off with painting the light end, the dark end, and then mixing up the number 5 and putting that right in the middle. So I think this process is very helpful just because it gives you a nice gradation. So if you want to try it a different way, you're welcome to. This is a bit tedious, but I think it gives you a nice gradation, like I just mentioned. So follow me as we get started. So I'm going to just point my camera, or the camera's pointed on my palette, so you'll just pay attention to the screen here as I start working. So like I said, we're going to start with number 5, so I'll just take a little bit of my white and a little bit of my black. They're equal parts right there. And I'm just going to mix those together. Now for this first batch of paint, I recommend giving yourself a nice amount. It's because from this center batch that we create, we're going to create all other colors. So this center batch really needs to be a nice size. So actually what I'll do is I'm going to give it a little bit more white and a little bit more black. All right. I like to clean my brush in between these dips into colors so that my brush stays clean, and then I'm just going to mix those up. thoroughly. Right, now I have a nice middle tone gray. And then I'm going to go ahead then and turn that, and see if you can see this here. I'm just going to go ahead then and start off by painting the middle number 5, which is right here, and I'll just paint that in, okay? And I'm going to see if I can turn this at a better angle for you guys to see, and I can work at the same time. A little bit better, yeah? Okay. So this is number 5. I've drawn in the lines on this with pencil, and I labeled them. So you'll see at the top of this I have number 5, and I've also designated this as a mid-key tone. So after I do this, I'm going to wash off my brush with some water. And if you're using your oil paint, you can wash off your brush in the Gamsol jar. So now that my brush is now clean, I'm going to start by mixing the next color. Let's go ahead and just for the sake of having things be even, I'm going to paint in number 9, which is straight black. You might need a couple layers to make it opaque. And when I say opaque, what I mean is just that it's not see-through or transparent, that it's solid color. You can make yours a little bit cleaner than this. For the sake of time, I'm just going to go a little bit quicker. I'm going to wash off my brush one more time now. I think for the number 1, I don't want it to be straight white. I do want to have a little color, so I'm just going to take a little bit of that mid-tone gray that I mixed up, and I'm just going to add a teeny smidge of that to my white, just to give it a little bit of color. It won't be that dramatic, just to kind of give it a little something. And then I'm going to paint that here on the end. All right. So moving on now, what we'll start with now is, so we have the mid key presented and the high key, which is our white. And if you watch the lecture that I'll put up on our Canvas page, I go over the definitions of these and what they mean. But we're going to do a 50-50 mix of this with this, and that's going to give us this number 3 right in the middle. So we'll go ahead and take this color and mix it with this color, and that will give us this color right here in the middle, okay? From that, then we'll create the colors on either side. So follow me as we start to mix this color here. I'm going to take this white. Now I do recommend keeping these values in the order that you're going to use them, otherwise it gets pretty confusing. But this is number 3. So I'll take the white, and with an equal amount I'm going to take that gray that I mixed up. Okay. And just make sure that you get it all mixed in thoroughly. I need a little bit more of that gray. All right, so then I'll go ahead and apply that here to number 3. right. And then we'll go ahead and let's go ahead and mix the color here, the one that's going to be in between these two. So number 3 and number 5. So we're just going to simply take the color here, 50% of this with 50% of this to give us this middle tone. So it's pretty much like you're doing the same thing over and over. So I'll take this mixture that I have, scoot it over now. And I'm going to take this equal amount of this gray tone and mix those together. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and paint that in. And if you think that it looks like it's not dark enough and it feels like it's almost too similar, then maybe you can always adjust it and add a little bit more. I think I might do that here. I think this is just a little too light. You can look at it and visually see, like, okay, if I think visually it's a little too light, then you can bring that up a little bit more, which is what I'm going to do right now. If you're using acrylic paint, you should also be aware that when your acrylic paint dries, it will dry darker than what it looks like when it's wet. So it'll look lighter when it's wet, and when it's darker, it'll dry, it'll be darker. To wash our brush off again, let's come back to the number 3 color, okay? Let's come back to this number 3 color, and let's go ahead and make number 2. So taking 50% of that number 3, I'm just going to scoot it over, clean off my brush, add a little bit of white, mix that up thoroughly. All right, and then we'll go ahead and add that here. When you're using the paintbrush to mix your colors, it's not as clean as using a palette knife. It's also really not the best way to mix paint for your brushes, just because the paint will tend to gunk up in your brushes when you're mixing like this. And so I would recommend using a palette knife, but we don't have one, so we're just going to do it this way for the time being. As I look at that, I can see that that's not quite dark enough, so I might darken that up. Maybe I'll add a little bit more of that gray to it. So I would come back to my number 3 and I would just add a little bit more of that to the color here. Okay. All right. Right, we're halfway done. Let's go ahead and move on over. So we'll go back to this mid key number 5. And we're going to add 50% of this now with 50% of our dark, low key, the black, which will give us number 7 right here in the middle. So I'm going to take this gray tone, mid number 5 that we mixed up, and I'm going to scoot it over here on this side of my palette. And I'm going to take the same amount of black and mix that together. Just going to make a little bit more to give myself some wiggle room to make out the other colors we're going to need. And I need to adjust that a bit. I think I added too much black. So we'll just go like that, okay? Okay, great. So let's go ahead and add that into here to number 7. Got a little messy on that one. It's all right. Right. The color's laid in. And we'll go ahead and start then by mixing this color number 7 with number 5, a 50-50 mixture to get this color right here in the middle. So again, I'll scoop a little bit of that color. I'm going to scoot it right on over. And I'll add a little bit of middle tone here. Should be an equal amount. You can see now why we need more of that middle number 5, because like I mentioned at the beginning, it's sort of the grandparent to all of these other colors. And I think I need to get that a little bit darker. You can see that it's not getting dark enough, then you can just augment it. I think that's the other problem with using a paintbrush to mix these colors is you can't quite get the amounts equal the same way that you can when you're using a palette knife. All right, so that's looking great. And let's go ahead and mix our last color, and we'll just do number 7 with number 9, all right? Washing off my brush again in my water. You're using a oil paint, you're using your Gamsol. We'll take that mixture that we did. I don't have much left, but I think I have enough just to get us to the last color we're gonna need. So I'll just use a little bit of this black. Try to get an equal amount. It's a sad little amount there, people. I ran out of my color. So I could, in theory, I could try to mix up a little bit more, and just because I know that you guys are probably going to run into this problem, let's do that. Let's just mix up another 50-50 batch of this middle color because I don't have enough to make my last. So let's just do that. So how did we do it? We took this number 5, okay? We took an equal amount of the black, and we made this tone here. All right. Now, if you want to see, okay, is it close? You can go back and look at it on your value scale. So we did number 5 with number 9 to give us number 7, number 5 with number 9 to give us number 7. I think I needed just a little bit more black to make this. So this should be like this. And remember, it'll dry darker. It goes on lighter, it dries darker. Okay, so now I'll take this color and this color, number 7, number 9, to make number 8. So we have enough of this now. Let's scoot it over, and I'm going to take this. Now that's a little bit better. All right, now I can come in here. Now I think, you know, obviously it's a pretty big jump here from number 8 to number 9. We could probably squeeze in a couple more values to make that step be less. And if you wanted to start and just mix up more of a gray tone on number 9, that might be a good idea. But what I'm just going to do is just to kind of make it look a little bit more even, I'm just going to take a little bit of that black and do sort of like one more step up from the last color that I made. Add a little bit black to number 8 and then kind of even that out on number 9. And then that'll help it give a more gradiated effect. And it will marry those, the step between number 8 and number 9 a little bit better. Okay. Right. So you guys, so just remember at the end of your session of working that you want to, if you have any paint left over, okay, if you have acrylic paint that you don't want to throw away and you have quite a bit of it and you want to use it, you can. So you can just, if you have some little plastic cups, you can scoop that paint and put it in the plastic cup. You can also cover, if you have quite a bit on on your palette. If you want to put a piece of cardboard underneath your palette paper and then you can wrap it in saran wrap, that'll save it. You guys don't really have that much paint to start with, so I don't think you're going to have a lot left over. But in the future, if you did, just know that you can always save your paints. So you're not throwing everything out because paint's expensive. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Hope this is helpful. Have a good night.